Loss is a Thing of Hope, a conversation with African poet Ọlájídé Salawu, whose chapbook, Preface for Leaving Homeland, is published by Akashic Books. Welcome to Writers Radio. I'm your host, Ingrid Rose. I began my conversation with Nigerian poet and Ph.D. candidate Ọlájídé Salawu with a quote by Professor Adeleke Adeyeko about the consequences of colonialism in Africa. Ọlájídé's poetry gives us the immediate and heart-wrenching experience of the many Africans escaping to Europe from poverty and war. De-colonization is drinking tea without sugar when there is no linguistic turn. The shovel must be aimed at the root, and the root is the language and its literature. Yes, you're nodding away, and of course you are. But I find it very interesting that you have taken upon yourself. You're not just a poet and a writer, but you have studied the whole process. My understanding is that your Ph.D. that you're doing at the moment in Edmonton at the University of Alberta, this includes also the apprenticeship to do with publishing.
Yes, internship with the University of Alberta Prize, getting that experience, right? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so it has been a fantastic experience learning in an environment like that. It's corporate and it's different from what we have in the classroom, reading papers, reviewing papers and, submitting assignment, critiquing theory and all of those things. Yes. So it's a corporate environment. You do more of administrative thing, but you do more of academic thing as well because you perform some editorial duties, right? Bibliographic duties, reviewing bibliography, reviewing drafts and all of those things, meeting with authors, contributors, people in the academia and who are interested in submitting their manuscript and, taking a kind of chance at their work with us.
Would you read your poem Lampedusa?
The first poem I'm going to take here is Goodbye to Lampedusa. And, goodbye is quite important. The poem Goodbye, in fact, the word goodbye is always a migrant word. Is a word that is highly valued by people who are moving, who are mobile, and who have been displaced this way, because it can be a finality, it can be something that signals hope as well. Goodbye to Lampedusa. It is what they say, because the sea does not have footprints to see where others have ended their journeys. And today, this incandescent afternoon, they tell you to follow the path of the wind. Follow it to where the water leads you as a new merchandise arrives with a parcel of goodbye. Goodbye is what they tell you as your final parting gift. So close your heart to unholy thoughts about the waves. So that's Goodbye to Lampedusa. The poem is just 2 stanzas, quite short, and
that's very moving. I mean, just wonderful images there. This incandescent afternoon, they tell you to follow the path of the wind. Follow it to where the water leads you as a new merchandise arrives with a parcel of goodbye. And you were saying that goodbye is an immigrant word and that it is both literally goodbye, but it also has hope. So tell us about Lampedusa, because I think many of our listeners won't know or if they're...
Thank you, Ingrid, for that question. Lampedusa, I would say it was a place that began to, attract my attention at some point in 2017. And then I began just to get curious with the news, tragic news, of course, of migrants, people moving, through the trans-Saharan, trans-Mediterranean, and, getting to Europe through the back door. And I was particularly moved by some of the experiences of migrants within the region of North Africa, and some of how they have been manhandled, dehumanized, how they were actually commoditized as a kind of products and exploited for their labors because they wanted to pass through their countries, and some of them were pushed without getting properly educated about the sea. And some of them actually were much more concerned about what they will see at the other side of the sea. So Lampedusa, it's an island, of course, an island that ties itself to Italy, which is a country in Europe, right? So it's a porter to Europe. It's an opening, it's a door, it's a gate to Europe. So people, migrants, actually look forward to getting to Lampedusa as their first place of salvation to get into Europe. Migrancy and violation of Black bodies who were moving to Europe and all of those things became a thing. And in the last decade, it now attracted so many sad stories of people who were actually moving through that particular pathway. So Lampedusa also, I've read a bit, and some of the characters that feature in my poems rather. So they were actually people, migrants. So, and I've been intentional in my use of that migrant name in order to bring my poetic, evocation of this particular event to reality, to as much as possible to resonate something that's really happening.
Are you saying that you characterize these people and make them real? Because I read that, they're coming from all over, the refugees, the migrants from Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, Chad, Eritrea, and Niger.
So some of the what I'm saying in essence is that in my poems, in my collection, I have names of people, and those names are not fictional names. They are names of people who experienced this particular tragedy and who communicated their experience. Some of them didn't make it, some made it.
You are really memorializing these people, making them flesh and blood, whereas we become immune when we just hear about millions of migrants, refugees, and we hear these terrible stories.
Exactly.
We don't know their names.
We don't know their names. They are reduced to what?
We don't even know the countries they come from. We know so little.
Their identities are completely eliminated, and I think it's what I'm a fan of theories as well. So it's what Giorgio Agamben is saying in Bare Life, that people are reduced to data and statistics. So you don't know because they eliminate their background, they eliminate their history, they eliminate their personality, their culture. So they are just like 3 people died, 4 people died, 10 people died. You don't even know them. So they are just data. Right?
Would you like to read some more of your poems for us?
Yes. The next one I'm going to take is Lampedusa Through the Eyes of Farmers. Lampedusa Through the Eyes of Farmers. Farmers says, That's his words in quotes now. I'd never been in a body of water before. I was trying to stay afloat by splashing my hands like a dog. Quotes end. The water says run, and the waves say so too. My body hangs on, proving courage to the shards of metal carrying us from bank of Libya, but now sinking. How do you run on water when your hands are not fins and everyone is holding on to the other, struggling to stay afloat this undulating surface? How do you swim when the metallic hoop cracks at the bottom and gives you out to the sea in the dead of the night? How do you hold to floating bodies half eaten by sharks? How do you know that the light dimming far away is waiting to welcome you? Poem ends. Thank you.
I was right there, in the water. Horrible.
It's horrible, really. It's horrible. It's horrible. So I think it's one of the poems in the collection so close to my heart because I read about the story and I was like, oh no, this is sad. I've never been to Lampedusa, but it's a place I would like to, to visit and to actually maybe see and relate with migrants who had passed through that particular place and felt their experience like and do what I can do to help provide, within my capacity. So it's not a nice experience, but also I think what I wanted to say, like what I have tried to say in that particular collection, Preface for Leaving Homeland, is to tell about what is actually propelling people to move, what is engineering this move, what is pushing people out.
Because of your skill with language, your activism is through your poetry and then through your writing.
Yeah, I think I've been trying as much as possible. I love poetry that delight. I love poetry about a chair or a dog or a music. I like just musing around, like writing about trees, birds, and all of those things. Things that take you. I've written poems like that they don't actually have political intentions. But most of my poems have political intentions, and I'm being deliberate about it.
Will you read us another poem?
So, from Preface for Leaving Homeland, I'm going to read another poem for us now, and that poem is about return migration, and I'm actually trying to see someone who has been displaced, dislocated, who has traveled or been exiled for some time, returns home and trying to really attach, reestablish kinship, reestablish connection with this place he or she or they have been disconnected from, right? So let's look at what happens to someone who has gone home and who has returned home, right? So let's look at what I'm saying here. The title of the poem is What Greets You When You Get Home. What greets you when you get home? The trees greet you blistering. The part you left has expanded its stomach and it no longer admits feet alone. Machines have rented the street. Your arrival marks the 3rd anniversary of your father's long decease. Your father sits at the side of an aspen tree while the wind breaks on his naked body, waiting one day for you to return. He sits there on the bamboo chair until the sun goes down. At the open veranda lies your mother's grave, which has grown some odd flowers to her memories. Your old friend has turned a village priest. He already predicts your coming. At your arrival, children gather around you like a modern god. They shout a name you no longer hear. What greets you when you get home? Are you embraced by mud wall or welcomed by a cow dung cemented floor? Your ears have lost the lyrics made it sing when they see feral men. You break and turn as one approaches you. Shrug her off. In distance, the wave of the city reaches your ears, stifling your yearning. What greets you when you get here? Your brother greets you, you no longer hear. Your father speaks in old proverbs that sound old. Your sister is now married with children. You might never see her again. What greets you when you get home? Your eyes looking for a discovery in between the crevice opposite the red mud wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very hard to reintegrate, right?
It's quite
after
hard
such experiences.
Honestly, because and this particular poem, it's so sad, so that even now, I myself, I have been part of that experience of reintegration, and I have not been dislocated from home for maybe a decade or something, but I still visit Nigeria, I still visit my hometown. But then some of my friends have changed. So in fact, I have almost only 1% of my friends back home now. All of them have been displaced. Some children have grown up. I can't recognize them again. The neighborhood has changed. My father's house, when I get there again, it looks different every time I return home, right?
Do you have another poem for us?
Yes, I think the 3 poems I've read so far, they are from my collection, Preface for Leaving Homeland. I think I can take 1 or 2 more from my draft in development. The first poem I would take is Inside Westminster Residence. And it's not Westminster in England, it's Westminster in Winnipeg. I had gone to visit my friend who lives in Winnipeg, and the name of the apartment is Westminster. So the experience of living there, and then at the back of his house, we have this railway track, and every morning in the evening, the railway will pass, and that and the same thing, that experience also resonates with what I had grown up knowing, right? It's when I was living back in my hometown, while I was growing up during childhood, we had a railway track at the back of my hometown. The pandemic was already beginning at that time because it was January of 2020. So and I wrote the poem. So the poem is titled Inside Westminster Abbey, and I had written it for my friend as well. For Chibo, biting as it may be, I still like the clatters of the train as it whirs behind the residence, heading towards Winnipeg's end. And this is what I devote my toying morning to these days: to stay at the window and watch January stumbling languidly to a conclusion, to watch the marvel of the ice rock stomach of Red River, to think about catastrophe as a thing of joy, to remember loss as a thing of hope. When the news breaks and funeral starts in the small town as some hour begins. Today, the air smells of the dead. The trees beside the house stand bare and vulnerable. The birds have headed elsewhere, but their elegies reach our veranda in this snow-faced city. The sun is in a hurry to go these days, desperate for the gray damask sky for gray damask to run over the sky. Each evening, I return to the same spot, longing to jump on the edge of this stream, to see if it will carry me through the arched forest of the world into my mother's arms.
Always, right? There are, even when you go willingly from your home, there's always that missing, you know.
There's longing that happens strongly. You feel that sense of, you feel sense of belongingness, that this is where I belong, Waiting lounge. You must learn the work of grace early in a country that delights in atrophy. You must train your fury at the hedges when they say, "Child, take your brother home and bury your dead in peace." At the airport waiting lounge, little gossips persist about bones and blood in nearby bushes. In Benue, a village was shaved clean of their human memories, and termites returned home with a harvest of bones and basket of eaten flesh. At the border, the prophet says, "I pray for you today, travelers. May exile be kind to you."
May exile be kind to you. Indeed. You've been listening to Ọlájídé Salawu, reading poems from his chapbook, Preface for Leaving Homeland, published by Akashic Books and available from the publisher. He also read poems in the making, full of yearning for a home that no longer exists. I'm Ingrid Rose, host for this Writers' Radio program, Loss as a Thing of Hope, a conversation with African poet Ọlájídé Salawu. Thank you to Carol Harmon, my co-producer and co-host, and to Gary Sill, our music maestro, who makes this all possible through his original compositions and technical skill. Thanks to you, too, our listeners, for being there.
You have been listening to Writers Radio, a non-commercial collaborative project which presents talented writers reading their own work. These stories, essays, and conversations revisit the long tradition of oral storytelling that connects us to the inspiration behind the words. Be sure to check the website, writersradio.ca, to subscribe to our free notifications list. It's also a way of letting the writers know you are there and appreciating their creative work.
Writers Radio broadcasts from Half Moon Bay on the Sunshine Coast in Canada, traditional tribal land of the Sechelt Nation of the Coast Salish peoples. We express our gratitude for their wisdom teachings and land stewardship.